everyone, thanks for joining. I'll just give it another 30 seconds before we get into the session today. This will be recorded though, so if you do have kind of any points that you'd like to go back on, then I will send you the recording straight after this session and you'll be able to catch up with anything that you missed on the session. So I'll just give it another 30 seconds for the rest of our attendees to join and our panelists too. So hello everyone, I'm Katie and I'm part of Team UI92, and so welcome to the third in our lockdown lunches series. I think the weather's a little bit better than last week. Last week it was very stormy and today it's getting a little bit brighter, so I'm happy to introduce the lockdown lunches on a little bit of a sunnier day. Hopefully you tuned in last week to watch our chat focusing on staying motivated during lockdown with mental health advocate Michelle Partington and our brilliant student ambassador Abs. It was a really fruitful and useful discussion. So if you would like to look at any of our previous lockdown sessions on our YouTube channel, you can go back there and have a look as well. This week, however, is a little bit different and a little bit more educational. So I'm joined by Rachel and Isaac, who are part of our founding industry partner, KPMG, and they'll be talking all things networking and making connections, and they'll have a little bit of a focus on how to make those connections in kind of a lockdown and virtual world. So without further ado, we'll just get straight into it because there's a lot to cover and a lot to talk about. So I'd like to introduce Rachel and Isaac if they can turn their cameras and mics on. Hello, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Katie. Thanks so much. We're really pleased to be here today.
So it's lovely to have you. So I'll turn my camera and mic off and I'll leave you two to kind of cover everything that you'd like to cover.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
So quick introduction to Isaac and myself. My name is Rachel and I work in the Technology Strategy Consulting Department in KPMG. My background is that I actually studied a languages degree. So that's nothing to do with technology, a great example of how we can take one background and go completely to another in KPMG without the training. After my degree, I worked abroad a bit for Mercedes-Benz in Maastricht, Netherlands. And then I worked a bit in a technical department at KPMG in cloud engineering. And now I work in a more client-facing role in technology consulting.
So hi everyone, my name's Isaac Columprum. I joined the KPMG graduate programme about 2.5 years ago. I grew up in Manchester, but I'm now living and working in London. And like Rachel, I'm part of the tech strategy consulting team at KPMG. So support a wide range of organisations with their tech transformation. I studied economics at university, so this isn't a degree that had too much to do with my current role. However, as part of my degree, I got to do a year in industry with Microsoft UK, and this helped to shape my career by developing an interest in technology whilst I was there.
So objectives for today. Today is an opportunity for us to tell you a bit about who we are at KPMG and how we work with UI92. So basically, we have a team of us at KPMG who partner with UI92 to organise workshops and skills building activities to prepare students to be more work ready. So we're going to talk a bit about KPMG, the opportunities we have available, the importance of networking and making connections. We think this is very relevant to a lot of you who'll be watching this content because even though you might just be in college, you might be thinking about apprenticeships, you might be thinking about work, you might be thinking about university. It's really important to start thinking about these networks early on and how you can build them. So we're going to actually have some of our colleagues also join and tell you about their networking stories and how networking has helped their career. We'll also talk about how you can expand your network both in person and virtually, which is particularly relevant because a lot of you are going to be going to university open days, interviews, all of that's going to be online, which is first ever because all of these activities were previously in person. Pass the next slide up. So a little bit about KPMG. KPMG is a professional services firm that specialises in audit, tax and advisory services. So we are a global network. We work in many countries, and in the UK we have 22 offices. So it's a great place to work if you want to have a professional job, but you also would like to work outside of London. Last year we celebrated our 150-year anniversary. And although our largest practice is of course in audit and finance, We also have departments in tax, pensions, consulting, deal advisory, technology and engineering, and KPMG business services. So we work with a lot of clients on a lot of really complex problems, business challenges. What else? We also have a lot of social mobility work. So we've come fourth. We're in the Social Mobility Employer Index for the fourth consecutive year. We do a lot of work with local colleges, schools, universities like UA92 to try and boost their kind of employment offering and make them really work ready.
Yeah, and as Rachel said, we work with a number of high street clients and organisations you'll hear about in the news. So a couple of names I can think off the top of my head: Barclays Bank, Coca-Cola, Booking.com, Arsenal Football Club. It's all really rewarding and exciting. We also work with entrepreneurial startups. So great example was Boohoo.com, who we worked with from a small company and seen the transition to a bigger company. Also worked with charities, local government, health service, universities and colleges across the UK. And a great example of our public sector work is the Scottish COVID vaccination programme, which we're helping to roll out at the moment, helping local government to meet their weekly vaccination targets. Great. So I'm going to pass to Rachel, who will kickstart our conversation around making connections.
Thanks, Isaac. So when we think about making a connection, it doesn't always have to be in a business situation or a workplace. This can be with friends, family, with extracurricular or through hobbies. If you're in college at the moment, you might go to a social club or a society if you're in university. A lot of this is also online at the moment. So to use a personal example, I studied Russian at university and I joined a Russian group recently on Meetup. And I met a lot of people who I would never normally, people not my age, not in my kind of demographic, that I would never normally speak to. So that was really interesting. We also think it's equally important for you to consider external events, networking events, conferences, career fairs, sports events, performances, maybe online events with employers. In terms of professional connection, it's important for students to know people and exchange. In the past, we perhaps say exchange business cards, but we live in a different era right now. So maybe to see what kind of external events, online coffee catch-ups, social media, follow employers on LinkedIn, join groups on LinkedIn, just see where you can make these kind of connections where previously that would have been in person by going to an employer event or a university event. Now this is all online, so it's just the challenge of how you work around that.
Great. So why is making connections important? I've got 10 reasons here and I'll try and get through as many as I can. One of the most important things, staying informed. So you might not be in college or school right now, so it's incredibly important to stay connected with people because you might not be having the same day-to-day conversations in person and hearing about opportunities that might benefit your career. So this could be things like internship or volunteering opportunities. Teaching you new things. So one of the characteristics employers are really looking for is people that are curious. And if you are able to apply curiosity to everything you do and everyone that you speak to, it's going to help you stand out. Make yourself more imaginative or innovative. So having a diverse network of people helps you to challenge yourself and think differently. And again, this is a really important skill going forward if you want to go into the workplace. Getting things done. So if you are on a college project or you have a goal where you need to go from A to B and you're not an expert in it just yet, you could spend a number of hours on Google or reading books, but actually consulting someone who is an expert, who may be a role model in that industry, will help you get a lot quicker. Gaining more credibility. So the bigger network you have, it means that you'll have more people that will likely vouch for you. And more often than not, if you're going for a job, you'll need a letter of recommendation or a reference. So having a bigger network and having people vouch for your work and your character is really helpful. Increase confidence. So this was a big one for me during my placement year. I remember my mentor pushed me to have one-to-one conversations with the different managers at Microsoft. And at first, this was me going out of my comfort zone, and I wasn't too sure about it, but it really did increase my confidence. And speaking to senior people and getting to do things like doing small talk is really important. Bridging the gap between yourself and employment. So it's important to fill in the gaps of knowledge that you may not have just by, again, reading up online. You need to speak to people who have been there and done that. So if you want to go into an industry in maybe music or sports or finance, learning from role models in these industries is really important. And finally, the last 2 points are quite good points I like around the opportunity to help others. So it shouldn't be, speaking to others shouldn't be just to benefit to yourself, but it should be beneficial to the person you're speaking to. Don't make it transactional. Enjoy the conversation, and more often than not, it might lead to a lasting relationship with these people or even a friendship. Great, so we have 3 KPMG employees who are going to talk about their stories around how making connections has benefited their career. So I'm going to start off with David.
Hi everyone, thanks for the introduction, Isaac. My name is David McIntosh. I'm an apprentice in our KPMG Glasgow office. I joined in 2017 and I'm in management consulting. My background, I would say I identify as socioeconomically disadvantaged or poor. And many of you might, or a few of you might resonate with that too. And I believe that society told me that to get to the next social status or social class, I had to wear a mask or a facade to connect with those people in that category, for me then to become in that category. But after joining KPMG, I realized that is not the case. I realized that vulnerability and being your true self is a true strength when connecting. And how I can put this into play is that if you only really need one really great connection, I believe. And how do you make a connection great? Well, you present your true self to that opportunity or that connection. You get them to understand what makes you tick, what your values are, where you want to get to. And if they understand you completely, they can pass you on to a like-minded individual. You then connect with that like-minded individual, present your true self, and then a compound interest effect of networking happens. But that only can occur if you are your true self. We often confuse performance with success. It's the old saying, if a conker falls from a tree, but no one's around to hear it, did it really happen? Well, that can be translatable to success in networking. If you're a really highly performing individual, but you don't have a network to support you when you are performing at a high level, it's much harder to make a sound without connecting. And you might think, oh, David, that's great, but what's an example of this? Well, my story is an example of this. In the firm in 2020, I presented a presentation called This Is Me, where I displayed all my vulnerabilities. I displayed about my mum passing away, about my poor background, all the challenges that I've had. And I just thought this was my story, but the amount of people that connected with me afterwards and said, David, that was like hearing my own story, and we found commonalities. I've eventually used that to leverage my way to speaking with KPMG's chairman, Bill Michael, with the Queen in December. And when I spoke with the Queen over Zoom, which you can find on the internet, I just told my true vulnerable story to her too. I got a nice letter from her at Christmas. So I hope that case study puts it into play. And to give you something a bit more tangible to take away, it's actually a dating psychology technique called assume attraction. And in the dating world, it's before going on a first date, you would assume that the person that you're meeting assumes attraction. And if you do that, you present your true self with confidence to that person. And that can be used in a business manner. Not saying that you should assume attraction of business leaders in your firm or in your uni or whatever, but if you can see past the glossy title of CEO or director or partner and assume that that highly coveted individual has as much to gain, if not more, from you, you will mutually benefit from that experience. Even in my personal life, I make connections. I run a podcast called the Development by David podcast, and that runs solely on networking. I have a new guest every week, and without being able to connect and have this leveraged spider web of connections, it wouldn't exist. So I hope you find solace in my story. I hope you find some sort of motivation from it. Please connect with me on LinkedIn or wherever you want to find me. But for now, thanks, Isaac, for bringing me along today.
Great, thank you, David. Maria, are you on the call?
Hi, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yes.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Maria. I'm based in the Manchester office. I've been with KPMG for about 2 years, working in the forensic department. And I've previously worked in audit as well and industry. So I came to KPMG as an experienced hire. When I think of the word networking, when I was a student anyways, it sounded quite daunting and quite professional. However, I think, as the guy said before, it's a form of communication, and you could network with your friends. It doesn't have to be, all your professional people. So I think that the relationships you start now at university will be the people you look up on LinkedIn in 5 to 10 years time, and it'll be actually interesting to see how far they've come. I've recently done it myself, and I'm quite surprised where everyone has been, different continents, different job industries. Some people, they start with accounting and they move on to marketing, but it's still interesting to have them in your network, because this is you then are able to get a bit of a different perspective. So when I was still in university, I was involved in various societies, such as the Business or Entrepreneurial Society. So this is where I was able to meet students from other backgrounds, but also not just students that started business. It could be anything like biology, physics, and this definitely allows you to broaden your horizons a bit and get some ideas, may lead you to a completely different direction and gain different perspective. And even when you attend events such as this, the more people you talk to, the more you'll understand about a given industry or business you're interested in, and if it's something you want to do. It's important to bounce off ideas. So I think the other positive thing about networking is that the more people you talk to that you don't know, the more confident you're able to build as well. And this is definitely going to help when you start going to interviews, when you apply for your first job, because it lets you step out of your comfort zone. And the more you talk about a subject, the more knowledgeable you are. And that's definitely going to help in your interview, because it'll show that you actually have done your research in the subject, and you're not just someone that just read something online and applied for a job. I remember when I started my first job at EY, most people in my year, they did audit, and then we'll go to college together in order to obtain a chartered accountancy qualification. So we spent quite a lot of time together, and we all became really good friends. And when we finished the qualification, some people changed and moved to other departments, or some did tax, some did transaction accounting or forensic. So forensic was actually a department I had never heard of before when I was a student. And this is one of my colleagues joined it actually. And we started talking, and he started telling me about all the pros and cons and what he actually liked about it. And it seemed really interesting, because it was about fraud investigations, anti-money laundering, so things you don't actually hear about every day. It's a bit of like gossiping about businesses and what they do. So I read more about it, and it seemed really interesting. And now I'm actually in the forensic department. And if I hadn't met that person, I wouldn't be able to know about that department and actually join it. So I think it's really important to broaden your horizons in that respect. So now I've worked for about 10 years almost, and networking is still as important as when I was a student, and I regularly attend networking events, and I talk to people from other companies. And don't think about networking, you have to talk about the everyday job or the things they do. You can first just learn about the person, get to know them a bit more, because the more you get to know them, the more they'll trust you, and that's how you build a relationship. You can't just talk about accounting business. So yeah, that's for me in terms of networking.
Thanks, Maria. Is Svetlana, are you on the call?
Hiya, yes, I'm on the call. Can
Perfect.
everyone hear me well?
Yes, we can.
So, hi everyone, my name is Svetlana. I've worked for KPMG for about a year and a half now. So my background is mostly within data and analytics. I have worked for a number of different companies, mostly within banking and investment management as well. So for me, networking has always been about support and learning. So it could be that you provide the support and learning, or support and learning comes to you. So I think one of the very first examples of networking was at university. I think I was quite scared of the word networking. Every time there was like a company's event, I always felt it felt quite daunting to go and speak to the people from the different companies, and I didn't really know what to say. I didn't really have a lot of like work experience and things like that. I was in my final year at university and I was trying really hard to get a graduate job. So I had been applying for like loads and loads of jobs, but I didn't really have a lot of success. And I attended one event, which was for Deutsche Bank, and it was focused around different people from different departments. They were talking how they joined the firm, their experience, and they were talking about different programs. So one of the programs that I saw back then, it was a train to hire. So you could work as an intern for about, I think it was 3 or 4 months. And then if they liked you and if there were open opportunities, they sort of offered you a permanent job. And that's what I actually ended up doing after university. So I think if I hadn't sort of gathered up the courage to go and speak to them that day, I don't think I would have sort of gone into that career in that area. Um, Another thing about networking is that I think what Maria said, it shouldn't always be you shouldn't always talk about career or job stuff. You can just get support in your day-to-day life. What, for example, we've been doing at work is there have been a number of coffee roulettes. So in some of the different teams, you just get randomly assigned to a person and you just have like a coffee chat every week for 15 minutes. So it could be anything about problems you've been experiencing at work. You could talk how to keep your plants alive. You could talk about, I don't know, DIY you've been doing around the house, but it's just generally having, you sort of build like a little support bubble. I think for me, it's been really important. So I'm Bulgarian, so my family's back home, so I haven't seen them for just over a year now. So I think just building those connections and that network really helps you sort of be happier as well. So I think that's what's really important. So yeah, I think that's it from me. So if you have any questions or anything, let me know.
Great. Thanks, Svetlana. 3 really good speakers there. We'll now move on to Rachel, who will talk about how you can make connections virtually.
Thanks, Isaac. Yeah, 3 really impactful stories there. That was great. So we'd like to talk a bit about making connections virtually because we think this is really important right now. And I can't stress enough that it's never too early to start building your presence online, to start making contacts. You might think like if you're at college or you're at university that you don't have a lot to put on your page, but you can put your interests, you can put any clubs or societies you're part of. You can say following this webinar, you can reach out to people like us at KPMG to start making connections. So yeah, we've just got a few top tips on the kind of things in terms of how to make connections and how to build your profile. So first of all, use the people you may know feature on LinkedIn under connections. So look at people who have similar roles, similar interests, similar career aspirations. They will automatically come up for you on this list. Find and follow companies that you admire. So if you're interested in business, if you're interested in accounting, you can follow professional services companies such as KPMG, PwC, EY, banks, these kind of things. And all of these companies right now are offering things like this webinar. They're offering a lot of online events. They're posting their latest jobs on LinkedIn. They're posting their latest blogs as well. They're posting online interview tips I've seen from a lot of companies. So if you're not on LinkedIn and you've not got a profile and you're not following your companies of interest, this is quite a lot of information that you're missing out on. One really good tip I have actually is to join groups relevant to your interest. So a personal example for me, because I study psychotherapy part-time, is I joined some groups on psychology and coaching. And from that, I found a lot of people, like I found a lot of organizational psychologists that led me onto a behavioral scientist, that led me onto another blogger. And these are all kind of resources that I can take back, at the very least to use in my clients, but I can also take it back to my work, to share with my colleagues. So in terms of how you can translate this for yourself, I would suggest that you follow your university of interest. They are going to be posting the latest research in your subjects of interest. This is all going to be useful for your personal statement, for any interviews. They're going to probably have groups for people who are interested in applying. They're going to be having online events that you can join. And you can also, if you're interested in a particular company or university, you can reach out to somebody who's working at that company in your department of interest. Just send them a message. Hi, would you mind to tell me about what you do? What's it like to work at that company? Would you mind to have a quick call? Or you can also do the same with the universities. You can compare what's it like to be at this university? What's it like to be at that university? Can you give me some details about this? I can't stress enough to not feel cheeky to reach out to people for all these bits of information, because that's exactly what that platform's for. And the same person might be reaching out to you in a couple of years for some information about whatever you're doing. So yeah, that's it for tips on LinkedIn. Just going to pass to Isaac for top tips on making connections.
And just one more thing I thought of was developing a LinkedIn profile only takes at most 15 minutes to make it really good. I remember I created mine when I was still at school, and it's a good way to keep track of all the people you might come across, both at school, at university, but also in a working atmosphere. So yeah, really worth looking into. So top tips. So in a professional setting, one of the main things is don't be afraid to make the first move, be proactive. This is a really important point in building your network. Confidence can go such a long way. My own top tip around small talk is be genuine. So don't treat networking or making connections as a game of, how many connections I can make, or boast about what your previous achievements were to someone else. Instead, genuinely take an interest in the person you're talking to. Who are they? What do they do? What's the most important things to them in their lives? And try to remember important information about them. If you have something at hand, so a pen and paper, or even a mobile, maybe jot some notes afterwards once you speak to them, if you want to keep track of all of this. If you're having trouble keeping the conversation going, start by asking some thoughtful questions as well. So how did you join your university, or how did you become a manager at your company? What does your day-to-day look like? Any advice for someone, a young person who's looking to get into your industry or onto your course? What are some of the most important things I should look for when applying for jobs or for university courses? So these are kind of examples you could talk about. And finally, don't just speak to people who are purely your friends or your family or people with the exact same interests. Widen that pool of people. Speak to people outside of your normal circles. Speak to your peers as well. Speak to your tutors if you're still in college, because they all have great experience and great interests. And going back to what our panelists said, so David mentioned about being able to show your vulnerabilities. That's fine. Use your vulnerabilities to your advantage. Don't have a mask on when you're speaking to people. Maria talked about the fact that her networking helped to get the role that she wanted in forensics. So she learned about a different team, a different opportunity, and it built up her confidence. And Svetlana, she was able to use the coffee catch-ups to just firstly talk about anything and everything, and then slowly build up that confidence with the people she was talking with. So yeah, those are all my top tips. And thank you for joining our session today. Feel free to reach out to us via UA92 after the session, and I'll pass it back on to Katie.
Thank you so much, Rachel and Isaac. You've got through quite a lot in half an hour, and that's really great to see and listen. I definitely got some really great points off the back of that. Just want to ask you a quick question, actually. So I'm just thinking about the students that I'll be watching. They may be in their kind of second or their first or second year of college, or they may be UI92 students, or they may just be general university students. But what is the best piece of advice or the best thing that they could start doing today to ensure that they create those connections and those networks that can inform their kind of job opportunities after university? What would you recommend that they do right now?
I would say to think about all the options that they would like to do next. So normally when people think about career, they think they're kind of torn between 2 and 3 options, right? And within those 2 or 3 options, there's several different companies or organizations or routes they could go down. And I would say to create a LinkedIn profile and reach out to all of the various options and weigh them up and weigh up the pros and cons and get the inside advice from the people who are working in those careers, rather than just kind of going into it. It is definitely worse to make your own mistakes, but it's great to speak to somebody who's kind of already made them and see, get a good idea of what it's going to be like before you actually do it, I think.
Yeah, completely agree. What about you, Isaac?
Yeah, I think building on what Rachel said, be open-minded. So you might have one career path that you've thought about for a number of different months, but actually a conversation with someone who's completely outside of your normal circle of friends or people that you speak to might actually change the direction of your career path. So initially I thought when I was going to university, I would go into finance, but it was through conversations with people on campus. It was through conversations with recruiters that I found out that technology industry was more for me. So yeah, be open-minded is what I would suggest.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with both of you. So research, be open-minded, and open and create a LinkedIn account, I think is kind of the 3 takeaway points for students today. And you may think in your first or second year of college, I feel a bit too young to be making a LinkedIn. And that was the mistake that I made when I was at college. I think the earlier you can create a LinkedIn and create that profile and that kind of buzz about yourself, the more chance you have of getting your name out there. So thank you so much, Isaac and Rachel, and our guest speakers from KPMG too. It's been a really enjoyable session, and I hope everyone has learned something new today. But I'd just like to say thank you and goodbye to everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.